This is the story where I met some kind of Salvia goddess who was egging me on to take more, like the kid with the vape in the school toilets, and as the kid without a vape, I happily agreed. This was more recent, and I was going to this trip purely from a curiosity standpoint. I had smoked Salvia like 5-ish times before, and after a huge life-changing spiritual awakening, I wanted to see how it might recontextualize the Salvia effects in particular, since they're just so different to anything remotely human, and as you'll see, I got an experience off Salvia I'd yet to have. It all started off with smoking 100 mg of plain leaves just to dip my toes in, see how sensitive I am, and get comfortable. It was pretty mild, but I still felt this strong mechanical energy moving/shifting my consciousness around like a gravity sensation, and it reminded me just how physical and tangible Salvia feels. So I went up to 125 mg, and this time I actually got just a little scared. I saw a couple of sharp spike-like objects come out of nowhere like you see in those fractal videos, and it was a bit unnerving. But yeah, it wasn't painful at all. It was just like I could see my body being turned into these spikes or wrapped around them, or dare I say penetrated. Still, it wasn't bad overall, and I was okay to go for 150 mg, but weirdly my very first hit was super strong. Like this giant wave was just crashing into all of my receptors. I could literally see it coming from across the room and getting closer, and I felt like it could get overwhelming quickly, so I put the pipe down, waited, and that's when it introduced itself. This feminine being came from seemingly every angle, and it welcomed me and said everything was okay, I didn't need to worry, and that I should take more Salvia. I was filled with this insane bliss, and it's known that Salvia can be dysphoric, but this was straight up euphoria, so I took more. Luckily, the pipe I was using made this really easy because I definitely was tripping, and it was like I couldn't take enough. With every toke, this Salvia god wanted me to take more and more, and just one more toke, like those personal trainers in movies, but with alien peer pressure instead. Eventually, I finished the pipe, and this being felt insanely powerful. I mean, really no words, and it was also insanely alien. Insanely. It felt really divine, and it told me not through words, but through this sort of instant direct telepathic communication that it wanted to have a relationship with me. It wanted to show me crazy, radical, and beautiful things, and it was like this whole trip it was trying to convince me to come back again soon so it could show me even more stuff. The vision I remember the most is, you could say, this sort of elastic band that could be stretched but would never snap. I also saw a lot of conveyor belts. I vividly remember these two conveyor belts pressed against each other, almost flattening everything, really dumbing this down because even the direction they moved in was indeterminate, which doesn't even make sense to me anymore, but in this trip report I wrote that I really liked the word indeterminate as a description of the form this being took. Whatever this experience was, it was telling me very directly, and not in some blurry way either. This communication was clearer than any human conversation I've had, and it was saying that it's a very misunderstood being and it's one of light and love, but everyone hates it because they don't know how to use it responsibly. Even just looking at how I used it, I'm an experienced psychonaut, and here I am working my way up slowly in dose, making this whole thing a ritual and preparing for hours and hours, versus a teenager who smokes 100 doses in their first go and then blames Salvia forever for their bad trip. Imagine you took 100 doses of mushrooms on your first go. Anyways, I'm not here to defend Salvia or anything. I still think it's one of the more psychologically dangerous substances, especially because most people simply don't know how to use it, and I'm not going to pretend that's not a variable too, because it is. Now, the nature of this being is still very fresh in my memory, and I've met entities on Salvia before, but this was completely different because it was so much more all-inclusive. And I'll be completely honest, it felt exactly like the god beings I've met on DMT. Like, exactly, which makes no sense because it's a completely different experience hitting different receptors, but in a blind test, I don't think I'd have been able to tell the difference, which is just insane to me, and I don't even know if that's gonna stay consistent or not in the future. Visually, it didn't seem to have any form in particular, though I saw hundreds, maybe thousands of eyes surrounding me, kind of like I was in a dome, and there was very much this feeling of shared consciousness, like I was being watched by it, and it was being watched by me. It's honestly really hard to describe this experience. All I can say is that it felt so powerful and beautiful and blissful. I've actually yet to have a bad Salvia trip before though, so I'm pretty biased, but I think a big part of that as well is just that I know what I'm doing. Like, you have to see psychedelics in the same way you'd see a loaded gun from the future. Don't wave it around with your finger on the trigger, definitely don't eat donuts off it, and if you really want the ultimate guide to using psychedelics safely in a way that actually brings you way more value, then check out our exclusive videos on that very topic. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the trip report. Here's my first ever Salvia trip report, which was the complete opposite of this experience, and yeah, have a nice day, everyone.